No, I haven't. And advance yet I maintain and everywhere advance the idea that humanity and nothing else with one's subordinates. From the official in one's department down to the copying clerk, from the copying clerk down to the house serf, from the servant down to the peasant, humanity, I say, may serve, so to speak, as a cornerstone of the coming reforms and the reformations of things in general. Why? Because take a syllogism. I am human, consequently I am loved. I am loved, so confidence is felt in me. There is a feeling of confidence, and so there is trust. There is trust, and so there is love. That is no I mean to say that if they trust me, they will believe in the reforms. They will understand, so to speak, the essential nature of them, will, so to speak, embrace each other in a moral sense, and will settle the whole business in a friendly way. Fundamentally, what are you laughing at, Simon Ivanovitch? Can't you understand? Stefan Nikiforovitch raised his eyebrows without speaking. He was surprised. I fancy I have drunk a little too much, said Simon Ivanovitch sarcastically, and so I am a little slow of comprehension, not quite all my wits about me. Ivan Ilyitch winced. We should break down, Stefan Nikiforovitch pronounced suddenly, after a slight pause of hesitation. How do you mean we should break down? Asked Ivan Ilyitch, surprised at Stefan Nikiforovitch's abrupt remark. Why, we should break under the strain. Stefan Nikiforovitch evidently did not care to explain further. I suppose you are thinking of new wine in old bottles, Ivan Ilyitch replied, not without irony. Well, I can answer for myself, anyway. At the moment, the clock struck 11:30. One sits on, but one must go at last, said Simon Ivanovitch, getting up. But Ivan Ilyitch was before him. He got up from the table and took his sable cap from the chimney-piece. He looked as though he'd been insulted. So how is it to be, Simon Ivanovitch? Will you think it over? Said Stefan Nikiforovitch, as he saw the visitors out. About the flat, you mean? I'll think it over. I'll think it over. Well, when you have made up your mind, let me know as soon as possible. Still on business? Mr. Prdcmnt observed affably, in a slightly ingratiating tone, playing with his hat. It seemed to him as though they were forgetting him. Stefan Nikiforovitch raised his eyebrow and remained mute, as a sign he would not detain his visitors. Simon Ivanovitch made a haste to bow himself out. Well, after that, what is one to expect? If I don't understand the simple rules of good manners, Mr. Prdcmnt reflected to himself, and held out his hand to Stefan Nikiforovitch in a particularly offhand way. In the hall, Ivan Ilyitch wrapped himself up in his light, expensive fur coat. He tried, for some reason, not to notice Simon Ivanovitch's shabby raccoon, and they both began descending the stairs. The old man seems offended, said Ivan Ilyitch to the silent Simon Ivanovitch. No, why? Answered the latter with a cool composure. Servile flunky, Ivan Ilyitch thought to himself. They went out at the front door. Simon Ivanovitch's sled with a grey, ugly horse drove up. What the devil? What has Trifon done with my carriage? Cried Ivan Ilyitch, not seeing his carriage. The carriage was nowhere to be seen. Stefan Nikiforovitch's servant knew nothing about it. They appealed to Varlam, Simon Ivanovitch's coachman, but received the answer that he had been standing there all the time and that the carriage had been there, but now there was no sign of it. An unpleasant predicament, Mr. Shipolenko pronounced. Shall I take you home? Scoundrelly people, Mr. Prdcmnt cried with fury. He asked me, the rascal, to let him go to the wedding close to here in Petersburg Slide. Some crony of his was getting married. Deuce take her. I sternly forbade him to absent himself, and now I bet he has gone off there. He certainly has gone there, sir, observed Varlam, but he promised to be back in a minute, to be here in time, that is. Well, there it is. I had a presentiment that this would happen. I'll give it to him. You better give him a good flogging once or twice at the police station. Then he will do what you tell him," said Semyon Ivanovitch as he wrapped the rug around him. Please don't you trouble, Semyon Ivanovitch. Well, won't you let me take you along?" "Merci, bon voyage." Semyon Ivanovitch drove off, while Ivan Ilyitch set off on foot along the wooden pavement, conscious of a rather acute irritation. "Yes, indeed, I'll give it to you now, you rogue. I'm going on foot on purpose to make you feel it, to frighten you. He will come back and he will hear that his master has gone off on foot, the blackguard." Ivan Ilyitch had never abused anyone like this, but he was greatly angered, and beside, there was a buzzing in his head. He was not given to drink, so 5 or 6 glasses soon affected him. But the night was enchanting. There was a frost, but it was remarkably still, and there was no wind. There was a clear, starry sky. The full moon was bathing the earth in soft silver light. It was so lovely that after walking some 50 paces, Ivan Ilyitch almost forgot his troubles. He felt particularly pleased. People quickly change from one mood to another, and when they are a little drunk, he was even pleased with the ugly little wooden houses of the deserted street. "It's really a capital thing that I am walking," he thought. "It is a lesson to Trifon and a pleasure to me. I really ought to walk oftener. I shall soon pick up a sledge on the great prospect. It's a glorious night. What little houses they all are. I suppose small fry live here. Clerks, tradesmen, perhaps. That's Stefan Nikiforovitch. What reactionaries they all are, those old fogies. Fogies, yes. C'est la mort. He is a sensible man, though he has that bon sens, sober, practical understanding of things. But they are old. There's lack of... what is it? There's a lack of something. We shall break down. What did he mean by that? He actually pondered when he said it. He didn't understand me a bit. And yet how could he help understanding? It was more difficult not to understand than it was to understand it. The chief thing is that I am convinced in my soul. Humanity, the love of one's kind, restore a man to himself, revive his personal dignity, and then, when the ground is prepared, get to work. I believe that's clear. Yes, allow me, Your Excellency. Take a syllogism, for instance. We meet, for instance, a clerk, a poor downtrodden clerk. Well, who are you? Answer, a clerk. Very good, a clerk. Further, what sort of clerk are you? Answer, I am such and such a clerk, he says. And are you in the service? I am. Do you want to be happy? I do. What do you need for happiness? This and that. Why? Because. And there the man understands me with a couple of words. The man's mine. The man is caught, so to speak, in a net, and I can do what I like with him. That is, for his good. Horrid man, that Semyon Ivanovitch. What a nasty phiz he has. Flog him in the police station. He said that on purpose. No, you are talking rubbish. You can flog, but I'm not going to. I shall punish Trifon with words. I shall punish him with reproaches. He will feel it. As for flogging, it is an open question. What about going to Emerance? Oh, damnation take it. The cursed pavement, he cried out suddenly, tripping up. This is the capital. Enlightenment. One might break one's leg. I detest that Semyon Ivanovitch. A most revolting phiz. He was chuckling at me just now when I said that they would embrace each other in a moral sense. Well, and they will embrace each other, and what's that to do with you? I am not going to embrace you. I'd rather embrace a peasant. If I meet a peasant, I shall talk to him. I was drunk, though, and perhaps I did not express myself properly. Possibly I'm not expressing myself rightly now. I shall never touch wine again. In the evening you babble, and the next morning you are sorry for it all. After all, I am walking quite steadily, but they are all scoundrels anyhow. So Ivan Ilyitch meditated incoherently and by snatches as he went on, striding along the pavement. The fresh air began to affect him, set his mind working. 5 minutes later he would have felt soothed and sleepy, but all at once, scarcely 2 paces from the great prospects, he heard music. He looked round. On the other side of the street, In a very tumble-down-looking long wooden house of one story there was a great fete, and there there was a scraping of violins, and the droning of double bass, and the squeaking tooting of a flute playing a very gay quadrille tune. Under the windows stood an audience, mainly of women in wadded pelisses with kerchiefs on their heads. They were straining every effort to see something through a crack in the shutters. Evidently there was a gay party within. The sound of the thud of dancing feet reached the other side of the street. Ivan Ilyitch saw a policeman standing not far off, and went up to him. "Whose house is that, brother?" he asked, flinging his expensive coat open, just far enough to allow the policeman to see the imposing decoration on his breast. "It belongs to the registration clerk, Peseldovmiov, Seldonimov, answered the policeman, drawing himself up, instantly discerning the decoration. "Seldonimov! Bah! Seldonimov! What is he up to? Getting married?" "Yes, your honor, to a daughter of a titular councillor, Mekopatov, a titular councillor, used to serve in the municipal department. That house goes with the bride." "So that now is the house of Seldonimov, and not Melekpotov's?" "Ah, yes, Seldonimov's, your honor. It was Melekpotov's, but now it is Seldonimov's." "I'm asking you, my man, because I am his chief. I am a general in the same office in which Seldonimov serves." "Just so, your excellency." The policeman drew himself up more stiffly than ever, while Ivan Ilyitch seemed to ponder. He stood still and meditated. Yes, Seldonimov really was in his department, and his own office. He remembered that. He was a little clerk, with a salary of 10 rubles a month. As Prdcmnt had received his department very lately, he might not have remembered precisely all his subordinates. But Seldonimov he remembered, just because of his surname. It had caught his eye from the very first, so that at the time he had the curiosity to look up with special attention at the possessor of such a surname. He remembered now a very young man with a long hooked nose, with tufts of flaxen hair, lean and ill-nourished, in an impossible uniform, with unmentionables so impossible as to be actually unseemly. He remembered how the thought had flashed through his mind at the time. Shouldn't he give the poor fellow 10 rubles for Christmas to spend on his wardrobe? But as the poor fellow's face was too austere, and his expression extremely unproposing, even exciting repulsion, the good-natured idea somehow faded away of itself. So Seldonimov did not get his tip. He had been the more surprised when this same Seldonimov had not more than a week before asked for leave to be married. Ivan Ilyitch remembered that he had somehow not had the time to go into the matter, so that the matter of the marriage had been settled offhand, in haste. But yet he didn't remember exactly that Seldonimov was receiving a wooden house, and 400 rubles in cash as dowry with his bride. The circumstances had surprised him at the time. He remembered that he had made a slight jest over the juxtaposition of the names Seldonimov and Melekopitov. He remembered all that clearly.